To politics now, and some brand new polls in the race for the White House, which seem to cement Donald Trump's front-runner status. A CBS New York Times nationwide poll has Trump with a whopping 35% of GOP primary voters, nearly 20 percentage points ahead of his nearest competitor, the surging Senator Ted Cruz. Trump is ahead of Dr. Ben Carson by a nearly 3-to-1 margin now, with Senators Marco Rubio and Rand Paul rounding out the top five. A Fox News poll in one of the early primary states, South Carolina, also finds Trump with a commanding lead there. But Carson is in second place in the South, barely ahead of Cruz and Rubio, with Governor Bush rounding out the top five. So is Trump going to be the next nominee? Our next guest says he's skeptical, and he's the man with the crystal ball. Larry Sabato writes in his newsletter, quote, "Every now and then a major party goes off the track and nominates a presidential candidate doomed to defeat. But this is a rare event. It could happen in 2016, given the strength of the Trump phenomenon. But a betting person would still wager against it." Larry Sabato, director of the University of Virginia Center for Politics, joins us now. Hey, Larry, if I'm Donald Trump, I'm going to be tweeting out to you immediately. Look at it. Look at his numbers. 35% support. How can you say he's not on a track to the nomination?
Well, fortunately, I'm not important enough for Donald Trump to spend time tweeting to.
Oh,
so,
I don't think
that saves me. But look, here's the key. Two-thirds of the Republican Party, two-thirds of the people who will probably vote in the caucuses and primaries are either undecided or for someone else. The key question in all of the primaries and caucuses to come, the whole season, is will they ever coalesce around one or two other candidates who can compete with Trump? Well, you used the right adjective in describing Ted Cruz. You said surging. He has actually gained more from Dr. Ben Carson's decline than has Trump. I think it's entirely possible, it may be even slightly probable at this point, that Cruz does very well in Iowa. He may win Iowa. If he wins Iowa, I don't know what it does to him in New Hampshire. He's not that strong in New Hampshire, but I can tell you he will certainly do well in South Carolina and other southern states that are voting in that big SEC primary on March 1st. So people are always trying to pull down the curtain, John, before the show is over. We haven't even started Act 1. That starts February 1st with the Iowa voting.
Ted Cruz has not publicly been critical of Donald Trump. In fact, it seems like he's gone out of his way to be nice to him. But we're just getting word that at a private fundraiser in New York City yesterday, Ted Cruz publicly, well, in this private setting, said that he questions whether Donald Trump has the judgment to be president. Clearly, he wants to stoke those questions among people who might be attracted to his candidacy.
Yes. Well, they are running against each other.
Sure.
They've been relatively nice to one another, and certainly Cruz has tried not to alienate Trump's supporters because he had hoped, as many of the others had hoped, that Trump would simply deflate on his own. Well, I tell you what we've learned, I've certainly learned, Donald Trump is much smarter and shrewder politically than we had imagined. He's never run for office, and yet, despite never having run for office, he has good political instincts. He's probably not going to deflate on his own. Therefore, Cruz and some of the others have recognized that they're going to have to take Donald Trump on directly.
You probably saw the story in the Washington Post this morning that comes to the same conclusion. It's kind of a grudging stamp of admiration on his campaign skills. Here's part of what it says. Trump delivers scores of promises, diatribes, and insults at breakneck speed. He attacks a regular cast of villains, including undocumented immigrants, Muslims, Hillary Clinton, his GOP rivals, and the media. He keeps the narrative arc of each controversy alive with an endless stream of statements, an unwillingness to back down, even when he has misstated the facts, and a string of attacks against those who criticize him. All the while, his supporters see a truth-talking problem solver, unlike the traditional politicians who've let them down. Spending remarkably little, he dominates yet another news cycle, and his Republican rivals languish in his shadow. Seemed like a pretty good summation of the Trump campaign thus far.
Yes. Look, Trump has been projecting leadership, strength, and toughness in a season when I think Americans generally, but particularly Republicans, want to see that. There's another piece of this, though, John. You know, Trump is irresistible to us, the media and the punditocracy. You can't take your eyes away from the screen when he's on, or even if he's just on the telephone, because you never know what he's going to say. You never know what's coming next. But because of that, he has dominated the landscape to the point where the other candidates have a hard time getting heard. That's going to change as the voting starts. That's another change that's coming once we get into the new year.
But you have used two key words in describing his candidacy for the November campaign. You say almost unelectable. Why?
Well, because the people that I rely on, that is Republicans who have run campaigns and Republicans who have actually been elected to high office, Senate and House and other key positions, governor, they tell me almost unanimously that they do not believe that Trump can be elected if there is a general electorate that's anything like what we've seen in the past several presidential elections. I've just learned, John, over the years to rely on people who've been there and who know what it takes to get elected.
All right. Larry Sabato, we'll see what happens as the field shrinks. Larry, thanks.